All right, here's the first of our videos on linear equations, and this one's a review on points in the Cartesian plane. Let's take a look. All right, so when we talk about points in the Cartesian plane, all we're talking about is dots on a graph. So Cartesian plane is just a fancy word for graph. To be able to say accurately where these dots are located on a graph, we need something called a scale on our axes. And the axes are the two lines that you see right here. The left to right one is called the x-axis, and the up and down one is called the y-axis. Now, where the two axes meet is at a point called the origin. This is a value of 0 on the x-axis and a value of 0 on the y-axis. Now, the scale that I was talking about is just the number that we count by on each line. These are like reference points on the grid to tell us how far we have to go in each direction, right, left, or up or down. Now, if there are no numbers written on the axis, we can assume that the scale is 1. If that scale is going to be something other than 1, like if we have to skip count by a certain number, that'll be written right on that grid for us. Now, the position of any point on the Cartesian plane relative to the origin is described using two numbers. One of them's x, and the other one's called y. And this pair of numbers, when used together, is called a set of coordinates. And coordinates are a description of exactly where a point is located in relation to the origin. The x value tells us how far right or left we have to go from the origin, and the y value tells us how far we have to go up or down. Now, that x value is either right or left. And how do I know which direction to go in? Well, if that number in place of x is a positive number, it means I move to the right from the origin. And if that number for x is a negative value, it means I move to the left, just like I would on a number line. And it's similar for y, except that number tells us how far up or down I have to go from the origin to end up at the point that I'm talking about. So if the number in the place of that y value is positive, I'm moving up from the origin, and if the y value is negative, I'm moving down. Now, there's really just one thing you have to watch out for, and that's what scale they're using on the x-axis and the y-axis. And remember, the scale on x does not have to be the same as the scale on y. For example, you could be counting by 2s on the x-axis and by 5, 10s, or hundreds or thousands on the y-axis. One thing to remember here is that once you have a set scale for the x-axis, it has to keep going by that number. So for example, if you're counting by 2s on the x-axis, you can't start counting 2, 4, 6, and then have it change and skip to 10, 12, 18, 25. It's got to remain consistent throughout the entire length of that axis. And obviously the same goes for y. Same goes for y. Same goes for y. Now, the last thing you might need to know about x and y variables is that sometimes, especially in word problems, we refer to them as independent and dependent variables. And for now, the only thing you're going to need to know is that x always represents the independent variable and y represents the dependent variable. And we're going to explain to you what the difference is in a future video. And for now, for this review, let's see a couple of examples of how we locate points on a Cartesian plane.